Let me paint you a picture. There's a student and there has been some extenuating circumstances. Maybe they've been sick and they've missed days, or they made a few poor choices at the beginning of the school year. And now it feels like everything needs to change for them at once. The grades have slipped. Those assignments that are missing have piled up and created stress. They're overwhelmed. They're just avoiding work altogether because it's just too much. And you are worried about what's going to happen if things keep going in this direction. And every conversation you have seems to uncover another problem. Pretty soon, the list of things that need to change or be fixed is so long that nobody knows where to start. And there's a good chance that a student in that situation is going to just shut down and be avoided because it all feels like too much. When this happens, the goal is not to fix everything at once. I'm going to share with you the 2 things that you need to do when it all seems like too much. Hey, I'm Kylie Larson. I own a tutoring company called Student Success Collective. I'm here today to help you identify the 2 steps to take when everything feels overwhelming and scary with school. Recently, I worked with a student in 6th grade. English was his second language, and he was at a charter school that had a reputation for being a pretty tough school with very high standards. This kid, super capable, he wanted to do well, but he also had an English language barrier that was making a big difference in how he could perform. And what happened was he took that stress and anxiety and he began to get a little silly in class, maybe not be as serious to kind of get attention away from those challenges that he was facing. School required so much reading, writing, vocabulary, following directions, figuring out what the teachers were asking. He became completely overwhelmed. And his parents were very concerned that either he would be held back or maybe he would not be allowed to continue in the school. So this is how his parents and I connected when they were looking for support. Of course, there were concerns about his grades. There were concerns about his behavior at that point. And when you looked at the situation, there were probably at least 20 things that we could have tried to work on. He needed help with comprehension, vocabulary, written responses, getting started on big projects or papers, completing assignments, figuring out how to manage his emotions when he felt overwhelmed, navigating the language demands of school, and so on. The key question was, where do you start when everything seems important? All right. So there's 2 things that you want to think about. The first is traction. And traction is the move that you can make that gets the student, what I just say is the biggest bang for their buck in the moment, so that the momentum is going in the right direction. When a car is stuck in mud, you do not start to get out of that mud by rebuilding the engine. You need traction. You need something that helps the wheels grab so that the car can move. And this is true for students when school feels out of control. What could make this situation noticeably better in just a few days? Possible traction moves with school might be completing the 2 missing assignments that are worth the most points. It could be asking the teacher for help prioritizing what order to complete assignments in. It could be clarifying a confusing assignment and figuring out what it is actually asking. Gaining traction might be spending most of your time preparing for a test that really matters, even if it means you cannot complete everything else. Gaining traction could be collecting easily recovered points. It might be emailing the teacher before the problem gets bigger. There are all sorts of things that you can do to gain traction right away. And traction is not going to solve everything, but it is going to create that positive movement in the right direction. I want you to use 3 questions when you're trying to figure out what to do to gain traction. Number 1, What is creating the most stress right now? Number 2, what will have the biggest immediate impact? And number 3, what can the student realistically do next? These questions will help you identify the moves that can help you gain traction. You can gain traction, but if you don't address the things that are underlying, that are creating the problems to begin with, you're going to land back at those same issues over and over. And then you're constantly just grabbing for traction, and you don't want to do that. If you only solve today's problem, you're going to become very good at rescuing the student yourself, or they're going to become very good at just living in survival mode all the time and solving the same problem over and over again. That's why every traction move needs a second move going alongside it. And this is called building capacity. Capacity is either the skill, the system, or the belief that makes the student better able to handle whatever the situation is in the future. What does this student need to learn, practice, or build so that all of this becomes easier from now on? Examples. So traction might be finish today's missing work. Building capacity would be let's build a system to make sure we track our assignments and we don't miss any. Or let's build a system so that if we are out because we are sick, we know what to do to get all of our work so that we don't get behind. Another example, traction. Let's prepare for Friday's big test. Capacity. Let's learn how to study effectively over time so that we don't have to cram and feel a lot of pressure right before a test. Example, traction. Let's finish the research project that's due tomorrow, right? Building capacity. Let's learn how to break this project down into little smaller deadlines so that we don't get to tomorrow and it's due and we've done nothing. We have built that project over time. Traction answers the question, what helps us the most right now in this moment? Capacity answers the question, what is going to help us next time or over time so that we don't land in the same position again? So let's go back to the 6th grader that I was telling you about earlier. With this student, we could not ignore the immediate academic problems he was having. He needed to have some success right now. He needed to experience a quick win, an assignment he could complete, a question he could answer, a grade that would show him, okay, I'm capable and I can do this. Number 1, he had a reading log that he was not turning in. That was going to be an easy win. If he could start turning those in, that would get rid of all of these zeros in the grade book for him. So that was the traction move that we decided to make. We were going to attack the reading log. I also asked him to ask his teacher if he read over the weekend extra, could he fill out previous reading logs over time and turn those in for partial credit. So our traction move was to find the zeros, and it was something easy that he could do. Literally, it was just write the date, write the book, write the number of pages that you read or the amount of time that you read. That was all he had to do to get 100 on this homework assignment. So it was something he's highly capable of accomplishing. It was an easy win, and we could start it that day. So that was our traction move. Now, as far as capacity goes, we had a lot to be concerned about. He needed help in reading, writing, and math. He was struggling with vocabulary, especially in science class. And there was so much that we needed to do to build capacity that I tried to look at several different angles. So on one side, we got him set up with reading, writing, and math academic tutoring. So he would see a tutor a few times a week in those areas. On the other hand, I tried to look at his daily experience and what would get him building capacity over time. And he was really struggling with completing homework. And again, he was struggling with the science vocabulary. He was struggling with turning in assignments. And I noticed that he was not completing his math either. So he probably could have had 10 things that he needed to work on every day. But I identified 3 that over time were going to make the biggest difference. So every day, his minimum that he had to do was complete his reading log, complete his math homework, and study his science vocabulary. If he did those 3 things and that's all he could handle, because it was a very overwhelming situation, then that was at least going to be our target. So when we came to building capacity, we were looking at academic tutoring and pairing that with a homework daily strategy. So, what I would like to report from that experience is 2 wonderful results. His grades improved by the time the next progress reports came back. And the biggest thing that happened was he began to take more responsibility and be more serious about school. He didn't have to cover up all those struggles that he was having with silliness and maybe poor behavior choices. He began to see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and was starting to take ownership of his learning. When your student is overwhelmed, I want you to just do these 2 simple things. Pick one traction lever to pull, something that improves the situation right now. It gives you the best result for maybe the least or easiest effort. And then I want you to find at least one capacity lever that you can pull, something that you will begin teaching or practicing over time that is going to build ability for the future. So let's go over a few examples. Let's say you have a student that's afraid to ask for help. Traction might be writing an email that night and letting the student look over it and kind of sending it together. Capacity would be actually practicing the words that the student can use to ask the teacher questions the next time. You're going to do one move for now and one move for later. Please do not choose 5 different traction goals, 4 systems, 3 habits, buy a new planner, get a new app on your phone, and try to do a whole life overhaul to solve a child's issues at school. If the student's already overwhelmed, you are feeling panicked or stressed out, the solution cannot be another overwhelming thing that you add to the list. What is hurting the student the most right now? What keeps happening again and again? What is one change that could create a noticeable win for us right now? What is the skill underneath this problem that needs to be taught over time? These sorts of questions help you figure out that traction lever to pull and that capacity lever to pull. Sometimes the visible problem is the grade, but the deeper problem is some sort of missing skill or system that they need. What can parents do right now, tonight, to help with this? Well, first of all, let's make sure that the language that we're using with the student is language that serves us. Sitting down with your student and saying, how could you let this happen? Why did you not tell me about this? I can't believe the teacher didn't give me notice that your grades were slipping. And just going into this spiral of blame and shame that doesn't serve anyone. Take a breath and let's say, you know what? This is a lot. We're not going to fix all of this tonight. Let's figure out what would help the most. Let's tackle that right now. And then let's discuss later some other things that we can do. And then ask them those questions that I just presented earlier. What is causing you the most stress? What do you think we could do today that would make things a little bit better? What is it that you don't know how to do that I can help you with later on so that you can get to where you want to be in class? What is something your teacher keeps mentioning over and over that they want from you that we could take care of? These sorts of questions will help your child think through the problem, even though they might not immediately take ownership of it. You can work on ownership over time. When everything feels like it needs to change, trying to change everything is going to be the fastest way to making everyone feel even more overwhelmed and paralyzed. Start smaller. Create traction in the short term. Start building capacity for the long term. Give the student a way to experience progress and positive momentum right now, and then use that breathing room that you're going to have to build the skills that make future success for them easier. If you have a capable student who is overwhelmed, stuck, or working much harder than they should have to, this is exactly the kind of student that we work with at Student Success Collective. And you can learn more about all of the things that we offer in the links in the description. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Kylie Larson with Student Success Collective, and I will see you next time.